right, it looks like we're ready to get started. Let's welcome our panelists. Thank you so much for coming. And if we could start first by introducing yourselves, and please state your name and your school as well, and then we'll get straight into the questions.
Hello, my name is Dr. Elena Dickerson, and I'm from University of California, Irvine. And I just want to take a second. My speech is very difficult at first to understand. I've had some, let's say, run-ins with head and neck cancer, and my anatomy's been rearranged a bit. So this is as good as I can speak, so the rest is up to you. All right? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dave Gordon. I'm a professor of pathology, and I'm from the University of Michigan Medical School, and I also head our Office of Diversity and Career Development.
Hi, I'm Maria Demler. I'm the Director of Admissions at Temple University School of Medicine in Philadelphia.
Hi, my name is Pat Samuelson. I'm from the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York, and I'm Director of Admissions there.
Good morning or afternoon. I'm Tara Cunningham from the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix, and I'm the Executive Director of Admissions and Recruitment.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm Dr. Carl Miller from Weill Cornell Medical College in New York. I'm the Associate Dean for Student Affairs and Equal Opportunity Programs.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Kim Peck. I am from Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center in Lubbock, Texas. I'm a family physician, and I am the Dean of Admissions and Minority Affairs.
Thank you very much. It's great to have everyone here again. And what we want to find out first is this is a question for all our panelists. We would like to know a little bit more about your school's curriculum. So we're going to try to focus a little bit more on the day of a medical life student. So what is unique about your personal school's curriculum? And we can start on this side this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Our curriculum is a block organ system-based curriculum. We begin with the 12 weeks of gross anatomy. We continue to use cadaver dissection for our anatomy course. And then you progress through a series of blocks that are organ system-based. We integrate clinical aspects as well as the anatomy and physiology and pathology. We integrate some of the pharmacology with the respective organ systems. And the students are tested within those blocks over a period of time. This is a new curriculum for us within the past 5 years, and it has proved very helpful for our students. The students like it better than longitudinal individual courses, and our scores on our STEP exams have improved remarkably. We also have a brand new 3-year curriculum where you graduate in 3 years with your medical degree. It is accredited by the LCME, the accrediting board for the universities and colleges of medicine in the United States. And it is combined with progressing into a 3-year family medicine residency program. It too is a block curriculum with some more intense longitudinal clinical activities to enable you to complete all of the requirements and competencies of the similar 4-year curriculum.
Great, thank you so much.
At Weill Cornell, we have a problem-based small group curriculum that's been in existence for about 15 years now. As a matter of fact, we're going to undergo curriculum reform. It's been a very, very successful curriculum. Students, all the courses are integrated. You do not see an apparent department like biochemistry or anatomy. Everything is integrated. And all of the course material is based on cases that students take beginning on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And by the time they finish that case, they know a lot about that disease, all of the physiology, the anatomy, the biochemistry, whatever that disease, and even the treatment, even if it's the first year. It's been a very successful curriculum, as I say, and it's based on around small groups. Now, don't forget, when you say problem-based, the entire curriculum is not problem-based. I don't think we have a totally problem-based curriculum in the United States. So you will have some lectures to make sure that everyone is on the same page. You start out in the first year with molecules, genes, and cells, so you can see where that's going, and then you have human structure and function later on. The second year curriculum is based on it's neuroanatomy, neurophysiology, psychiatry, all together, a course called Brain and Mind. which is a very tough course. The students complain about it, but it's probably the most organized course at the medical college. After that, you have your pathophysiology, which leads you on to your third year courses. As I said, the curriculum has been very, very successful. Board scores, like as in your school, have increased. They're much better. Not that they were bad in the first place, but they're much better now. I mean, visibly so. Students do very well in every aspect of it. Students are much more relaxed. They're very relaxed now because we just went problem-based. I know a lot of people was asking me about that yesterday. Cornell is now problem-based, and it's also pass-fail, okay? This was a big question that was mine. I don't really think it makes any difference to most students, but students seem to be much more relaxed. So that's in a nutshell.
University of Arizona College of Medicine, both in Phoenix and Tucson, is also an organ-based, system-based curricula, pass-fail as well, and I think that's becoming more and more common. Phoenix has some curricular elements that make us more unique from our Tucson campus, and I'll highlight a few of them. The first and probably most noticeable of our student body is a 4-year scholarly project. It's a graduation requirement that all students identify a research question, work through their methodology, collecting data, analyzing the data, and then presenting it in their 4th year. So it's a culmination of 4 years of research leading to one of those graduation requirements. The second element that makes our curriculum a bit more unique from some other programs, and certainly our Tucson colleagues, is at the end of each of these blocks, as you've heard from the other panelists, we have a week of capstone experiences. This is an opportunity for the students to leave the lecture hall and go into the hospitals, go into the clinics, and see firsthand the diseases that they've just spent 10 weeks learning about and through their lectures and labs. This is also a great opportunity for students that need to remediate content from those 10 weeks. They have that opportunity before starting the next block of courses. Essentially, we don't want our students to start behind on the next block, already starting behind, if you will, from needing remediation from the previous block. And then the third component, and probably the most popular among our students, is an early, meaningful clinical experience called the longitudinal clinical experience. One afternoon every other week, a single student visits in the same primary care office for 2 years. This preceptor is a mentor, a role model, someone that can guide them and really give them the enriching experiences and opportunities that they typically wouldn't receive until they begin the clerkship training or hitting the wards in their 3rd year. So this stretches the first 2 years, building that continuity of care, interacting with the same physician for one afternoon every other week. The opposite week, you're in a very structured environment practicing your histories and physicals, patient examinations with our standardized patients. So then what you practice in the standardized room with our patients, you then see in lifetime the opposite week for that afternoon. And that's been the most favored piece of our curriculum thus far for our student body. This is our 5th year as a new medical school. We are riding, if you will, under the umbrella of the University of Arizona Tucson program that's celebrating its 42nd year. But Phoenix is just now graduating the inaugural class of students in the spring semester. So every day is a new day on our campus, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and certainly if you're a student of a pioneering spirit, you'd fit in really well with a growing and evolving campus.
That's great, thank you.
At the University of Rochester Medical Center, we have a curriculum we've called the Double Helix. And about 13 years ago now, we completely overhauled our curriculum. We took the basic science strand and the clinical science strand and intertwined them 4 years. So at Rochester, you have 4 years of basic science and 4 years of clinical science. Now, with that statement, I must say that there is more basic science in the first 2 years, but you do start your bona fide clerkship in your 2nd semester of 1st year, and that continues through the 2nd year. So we thought that many of you come with experience, clinical experience, shadowing, et cetera, before you start medical school. You don't want to spend all your time in a lecture hall. or studying, you'd like to get involved with the patients, and we started that then. As I said, we're entering our 12th year this year with that curriculum. It's been very successful. Our students enjoy it very much. We think it helps drive their interest in the basic sciences. They want to be able to understand what's going on molecularly and so forth when they're working with patients and under a preceptor. So they begin that in, as I said, the second semester of their first year, and they're in that preceptor's office 2 afternoons a week. And then the third afternoon, they are studying as a group or small groups some of the additional information as they're continuing to learn. Our students are a little bit tentative. That first time they enter the physician's office, they don't feel they know anything, but they quickly learn, and our preceptors know that they are first-year students. Our preceptors are all given information on the courses and content that they're receiving each week, so that gives them an opportunity to help our students continue to learn those different principles. That is the double helix. Then in the third and fourth year, after they complete their clerkship in the hospital setting, the first 2 years are in ambulatory setting. Third and fourth year are hospital setting. They've already had 18 months of working with patients. They're very comfortable. They've done complete histories, physical exams, one-on-one with patients, and it just makes them more comfortable dealing with the patients in the hospital that aren't typically simple diseases. It's a bit more complex. And we think it just gives them a better comfort level, and they will go through the traditional categorical clerkships in the hospital in third and fourth year. At the end of that clerkship, they have 2 weeks of basic science. They come back to the lecture hall. They talk about the cutting-edge research that's going on in that particular, related to that particular clerkship. All of our courses are integrated horizontally and vertically, so human structure and function, I had to smile when I heard Cornell's course titles because they're very similar to ours. But anyway, they're integrated amongst the basic sciences and vertically in the afternoon in the first semester with our clinical introduction to clinical medicine. So they get to, for example, one example I give is they're dissecting the knee in their gross anatomy class. They're learning about the embryology and physiology of the knee, and then in the afternoon they will be in their introduction to clinical medicine learning how to examine the knee, have a PBL related to ACL tear, for example. So very much integrated horizontally and vertically. We are a hybrid PBL curriculum, so there are lectures, PBL, small group, and labs with all of the basic science courses.
Great,
Thank you.
Hi. At Temple University School of Medicine, we introduced an integrated organ-based curriculum in 2005. With the curriculum redesign, there was a focus on giving you all of the discipline-based basic science material in the morning, so students are in the classroom between 8 and 12, either with conferences, labs, or large group lectures, and afternoons are dedicated to our doctoring course. In the first year, in the basic sciences, we cover the normal functioning of everything. It's an integrated organ-based curriculum. So we start you out with a block of gross anatomy. Students have nothing but gross anatomy, which is team taught in the gross anatomy lab and in small group conferences. When that block is over, we introduce you to elements of bioscience, really the building blocks of the body. And then the remaining part of the first year covers the normal function of each of the systems, cardiovascular, pulmonary, and so on. You do have discipline-based lectures, but the exams themselves are designed as clinical vignettes with a variety of questions covering what you've learned in that block. The students finish out the first year with an introduction to pharmacology, pathology, and immunology, which, when the curriculum was redesigned, we moved the beginning of the second year of medical school to the end of the first year. When the students return in year 2, they have a microimmuno block, and then they revisit each of the systems and learn about the disease processes, how they're treated from a medical perspective, a surgical perspective, but also there's pharmacology in there as well. Our curriculum in the second year ends in March, which is earlier than a lot of medical schools. One of our goals with the curriculum redesign was to get students out into the clerkships sooner. So the clerkship years, the third and fourth year, run from May until April, and which is really helpful in the fourth year, where you have, excuse me, a number of electives. You can do those electives, confirm your career choices before the residency application process begins. The doctoring course that I mentioned runs all 4 years, but in the first 2 years, it's held exclusively in the afternoon. Monday afternoons are resource sessions where everyone's together and you learn about what it is that you'll be covering that week in doctoring. And then your small group doctoring activities would include feedback and reflection discussions. It would include standardized patient encounters, simulations in our sim center, small group sessions on the essentials of a physical exam or doing a patient history. There's also hospital-based sessions in those first 2 years in the afternoon, as well as community-based sessions. So really a broad introduction to clinical medicine in the afternoon those first 2 years.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Hi, at the University of Michigan, we have a lot of similarities to the curriculum of the schools that have just mentioned, so I'm going to highlight a few things. Ours is an integrated block-oriented system. So, for example, your first year is mainly focusing on what I call how the body functions normally. So that's where you get your gross anatomy, your normal physiology, your histology, and things like that. We also then in the second year go to what goes wrong in terms of specific diseases. So again, we have a organ system-based approach that marches you through the different organ systems and talks about all the different diseases that you will encounter in those particular areas. During those first 2 years, however, we also sprinkle in a number of certainly problem-based learning opportunities. We have lecture format. We have, small group sessions. One particular course we have to try to get students to understand medicine from the patient perspective is what we call the family-centered experience. In this case, we have groups of maybe 2 to 3 students that pair up with an actual family that typically has one member of the family or maybe more that are engaging the health system with typically some sort of chronic disease. So it may be a kid with cystic fibrosis, or it may be an adult with a lung transplant or something like that. The idea is really not so much to teach the basics of medicine, but there to give the students some exposure to some of the hurdles that our patients and families go through in terms of navigating our health system, dealing with issues of insurance or non-insurance, barriers to communication and things like this. And so this runs through the first 2 years. And again, these are features that I suspect are present in many of the other schools as well. So I'm just highlighting some of the things to give you a full breadth of the kinds of things that go on in medical school. We also start our third year, if you will. Let me back up and say between the first and second year, that's the main time when students have a summer off. A lot of those students will engage in a research project, for example, during that time, or engage in some other clinical activities before beginning the second year. Towards the end of the second year, that's when most people study for their USMLE 1 board, and we do provide students time to do that. Into the third year, that is our core clerkships, and again, I'm assuming like most schools, that's where you go through a series of exposures to sort of the main areas that the vast majority of physicians will likely end up practicing. So those end up being typically internal medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, neurology, emergency medicine, family medicine, and also OB, obstetrics and gynecology. I may have missed one. But basically, these are the main areas, and you go through those things, and you will be seeing patients both in inpatient as well as outpatient experiences. And then the fourth year is where you have most of your elective time. So at the beginning of that portion, that's a time when students can refine what area they want to go into, and will also be applying to residency training programs, as well as they can take other electives, and we have a number of sort of non-traditional electives, if you will. To give one example, we have one elective that exposes students specifically to the issues of underserved and disadvantaged patient populations. It's a seminar series paired with putting you in safety net clinics, and so you get a sense not only in terms of seeing those patients and understanding what their particular hurdles are, but also understanding how those safety net clinics operate, how they're financed, how they're run, what problems they have in terms of maintaining their function, as well as being able to talk with physicians in that setting to get some mentoring and also understand what difficulties they've had in terms of pursuing those sorts of careers. So that's just one example of many of the types of electives that we offer. Let me end by saying that at least with our curriculum, and I'm sure again it's true for many of the other schools, I think from a student perspective, it's worth considering how you best learn. You have some sense now after having gone through numerous years of schooling thus far as to, do you learn best, for example, in a lecture format, or do you learn best by reading, or do you learn best by, watching a audio rendition of the lecture or a video rendition of the lecture. I'm told at University of Michigan, for example, all of our lectures, particularly in the first 2 years, are taped. And I'm told that, for example, there are some students that rather than see Dave Gordon live giving a lecture, they much prefer to download the thing, have fast forward through the jokes, and just focus on the material. So I just give that as one example, because you want to pick a school that basically provides hopefully a variety of different learning modalities for the same material so that you can optimize your own learning best. And that's one piece of advice that I would give you as you look at different schools. All schools are basically going to cover the same basic information. You will be well trained to be a physician in all schools, but many of the differences are things that I think cater to different learning styles, and that's worth giving some attention to.
All right, last on the panel. I think everything's been covered. Temple and Michigan sound just almost identical to UC Irvine, where the first year is our normal, second year is our abnormal, I call the basic sciences. Third and fourth, third year are electives identical to Michigan, so I won't repeat them. And the fourth year is elective time, and some tour rotations, where you're really deciding what to do with the rest of your life and applying to residency. Back up a little bit, I think Temple was the same way. Typical day of our first years, they come in the morning, most of it is lecture-based. They will break up into small group discussions if that's what that particular instructor wants to do. And then every afternoon they will come in and they have what is called Clinical Foundations 1, where they will have a patient, a standardized patient, because we start this the second week of med school. These are actors that very well portray symptoms, and the student will get experience taking history and physical on these standardized patients. Second year, now they know how to do normal physical and histories, etc. Now the abnormal patients come in, maybe heart disease, we're studying in pathology. If we can't bring a patient in that has that particular heart abnormality, we have the simulators there. Well, they will talk to the standardized patient and listen to the abnormal sounds in the simulator. So we integrate simulation plus our standardized patients, as they do at Temple and Michigan, I'm sure some of the others. And that way, by the end of March, is the end of your second year, you take about 6 weeks to study for your boards, take your boards, then you're back, and we get you ready to go to the hospital to apply what you've just learned in the first 2 years. One highlight I must say about Irvine that I didn't hear mentioned here. First of all, many of our students take a year off between their second and third year to possibly do an extended research project if they want to get in a very competitive residency program. After the third year, many will take a year off to get maybe an MBA. We have a Master's in Business and MD program. We also have a program in medical education for the Latino community, where those students also take a year off to get a Master's in the disciplines such as public health, public policy, so they can better go and serve the underserved communities to affect change as far as the way healthcare is delivered. So those are some, and we also have the MD PhD programs. I know my colleague here at Michigan does. I'm not sure of the others. But so those are some of the things we have to offer Irvine. But I echo what everybody said. Find what school you feel comfortable in, what style appeals to you, because everywhere the bones and the muscles of the body are the same, whether they're taught in Michigan or in Irvine. Okay?
Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to some of the questions that our students submitted. And since we learned a little bit about the 4 years of medical school and what they're like at each of your schools, if I could have let's go with Tara Cunningham. If you could touch a little bit upon what is the most difficult thing that people find when adjusting to medical school? So in that first year, once you get in there, what's the toughest thing to get used to?
I think each of you comes to medical school with an identity. You may be an undergraduate student focused in a particular area. You might be a girlfriend, a boyfriend, maybe even a parent. That's your identity as you've known it all those years. When you become a medical student, your identity is now a medical student, and your lifestyle and the networking and your social activities go through a transformation. We spend a week orienting our students to medical school prior to the start of the first day of class. And a lot of those exercises are built around that transitional period to give you an idea of what to expect with regard to your time. Everyone in a medical school wants a slice of your time, whether it be faculty, staff, organizing student events. And at some point, you come to a situation where you have to make tough decisions, and you choose one or another activity over another. And that's a tough thing for students that are driven, that are natural leaders, that want to give selfishly their time. But at some point, you have to start reeling it back and taking care of yourself. And those activities will still occur, but you might not be the driving force at every single event. And I think that change in a medical student or a change in a very active student lifestyle is what caused some of our students or catches students by surprise. Just the nature of the information coming at you in a variety of ways, from small group discussions, the lectures, podcasting, whatever it may be, is also, I'd say, the second challenge for a student, wherein you're taking a semester of biochemistry and now it's being revisited in a 1 hour lecture, maybe 2 hour lecture. And that's the last time you're going to hear that for some time until you revisit that content in the next organ system. So it's this process of building on information, this culmination of information that I think catches students by surprise. And you're often second guessing yourself along the way. Do you know? How much do you know you know? You think that you don't know a lot that you really do know. So you'll go through that second guessing stage. We typically see this happen in November of a student's first year. This effect falls over the students. We can see it in their face. We can see it in their body language. We find them retreating into corners of campus, studying in silos, and they're just getting to that point of realization that their time is a little differently spent now as a medical student, and that is that identity that you've been wearing up through medical student. So I hope that gives you some idea of the challenge and the transformation. But I'll say after the second year, you're a pro at this, and then all of a sudden your identity becomes a medical student in a hospital wearing your white coat, and that has its own learning curve. But there are a lot of schools, in many medical schools, that prepare you for that transition as well that occurs after you take your step one. So just appreciate that community around you in medical schools is to help you get through that transformation. You have to learn how to ask for help. You have to learn that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. There are professionals in your learning resources offices, your student affairs deans, that are there to help you through that transformation. It's not something you have to go through it alone, and we'd much rather ask that, or, beg of you to come and ask for that help at the time that you recognize you need it until it's too late, and then all of a sudden you're up a different hill to climb. So start thinking about how to ask for help now, whether it be your friends, the faculty, the staff around you. Everyone wants to see you succeed. We wouldn't spend so much energy selecting you in medical school admissions if we didn't want you to succeed. So we're here to help you through it, not to get you out of it.
Thank you. That leads directly into our next question. Dr. Miller, if you'd like to touch on what resources are there to deal with some of the problems that students face initially?
Thank you. That's a very important question. Students come in, a lot of them are very unsure and confused. You have a number of students who bring problems with them from family, from personal relationships, financial problems, etc. So we tend to have certain offices that addresses specifically those problems. For instance, of course, everyone has an office of financial aid, but we have a very, very helpful office that can really go through a lot of their problems that they have in that area. and actually help them actively while they're in medical school. Of course, there's the mental problems that students may bring or develop while they're in medical school, and we have a very active two-tiered system to help students through that process. My office is very, very active in helping students find resources that will help them through their academics. We have a very, very active academic affairs office where students can find tutoring enterprises and other areas where they can get help in that area. Students also need help in the personal types of relationships that they go through, and my office is very active in helping students sort those type of things out. So there's an abundance, I think, in all medical schools. We're required to have these resources just for students, and something very important that was said is that we're really here to help you. We're really here to help students. It is a very, very complex, long, and drawn-out process to get from your application to your interview to being a student. And there are a lot of things along the way that you may find disturbing. Rest assured that when you're in medical school, you will get the support that you need to make it through, which is why I think you see the numbers of students who go into medical school is almost as great as the numbers when they graduate.
Thank you very much. And now let's move on to a little bit more about what can you do while you are in medical school. So we talked a little bit about the troubles. So you mentioned Dr. Peterson. You mentioned that you do have a PhD program. Do students get involved in other things, maybe extracurricular activities as well? Because if you can complete a PhD, hopefully you can get some other things accomplished. Yeah.
Okay, my favorite topic, thank you. When you're in a medical school, you don't stop being a human being or an individual. And we think that's really important. In fact, we pick our class to make sure we have diverse interests in the class. We have musicians. We have athletes. We have very good athletes. We have people that have our artistic side. And why? Because even though we have a small student body, our class is 104. So it's, you can multiply by 4, and then the people that are there for MD-PhDs. It's a small student body. We encourage our students. In fact, our Powder Puff first or second year football game is Monday night. The faculty will be there. Those things are important to team build and also have some fun. All right? You can't study 24 hours a day. Or if you would, you're going to need our counseling services. So we encourage you to get involved with each other. We have talent shows. We have the UCI medleys, which was started by our students. It's a vocal group, an a cappella vocal group. They now go around performing everywhere. So there are a variety of things. We have a Humanities magazine that display art, poetry, etc. That's published once a year. I'm sure all the other schools have these types of activities. So we don't want you to overextend yourself, but we also want you to be well-rounded as you emerge from med school, because you'll be a much more interesting colleague, and you'll be much more interesting to your patients.
Thank you. Any additions to that topic? Okay, and do any of your schools here have requirements for community service, for example? I know some schools require students to participate in student-run clinics. Does anyone have any of those requirements?
We don't have a requirement. Almost 100% of our students do significant community service. As a matter of fact, it's so significant that we honor the students who have done very, very significant community service with a program called Honors in Service. And on your diploma, when you graduate, you graduate your name with MD with Honors in Service. We also have the same thing with research. And this is because over the years, we've noticed that our students have done significant, when I mean significant community service. Sometimes I don't even know how they find the time to do it. But this is from free clinics. They have Weill Cornell Community Clinic, which is a free clinic for the uninsured. They have a program called Camp Phoenix, where students we have a very large burn center at Cornell, where the students who have recovered from their burns are all joined in a camp, and they do several activities during the year. It culminates with those students actually going to camp away from the city. They have, Grand Central Clinic where they go and they help the homeless, and the clinics have very significant service activities. It is not required. It doesn't have to be. Students are really willing to do this themselves.
I'd also like to mention at Rochester, we have a great deal of student involvement. We have 2 student You Are Well clinics, and with the initials UR, which is for University of Rochester. But that was founded by our students many years ago now. They initiated it, started it, got the funding, got a building and so forth, and that's continued and has grown. So it's run by medical students. They have volunteer attending physicians and residents who volunteer their time. But in addition, we also have a required course called CHIC, Community Health Improvement Project. So this is where it's in the 4th year. The students have decided on which area of medicine they wish to go into, and now they have to go out into the community and do a project with an organization that was somehow related to the area of medicine they wish to go into. One example I can give you is one of our students was planning to go into neurosurgery, and he said, what in the world can I do related to neurosurgery out in the community? What he did was he contacted a bicycle company, talked with some other folks, and started a drive to have free helmets for kids in the city of Rochester. And as you probably know, head trauma is significant in bicycle accidents. So that was how he developed something in his area of interest that then could be implemented in the community. But that's just one example. So all of our students are required to do that CHIC project in the 4th year.
Go ahead. Or Ms. Peck, did you have something to add?
We have a similar arrangement at Texas Tech where we do have a student-organized free clinic that is voluntary participation. And again, we have almost 100% of our students are involved in community service and volunteer activities. We also have required activities in that they are part of our early clinical experience courses in the 1st and 2nd year. And in the small group segment of those courses, each of the small groups selects a community service activity and carries that out as a part of that course.
That's great, thank you. And so we've talked a little bit about the extracurricular activities, but what about research? What opportunities do your students have to get involved in research? Ms. Demler, did you have any?
Sure. Most of the research for our students occurs the summer between the 1st and 2nd year. It was mentioned earlier that that's really your last free summer, because once you finish the 2nd year, you take step 1 and then move into the clerkship. So the summer between the 1st and 2nd year, you have the opportunity to do clinical research, basic science research, whatever your interest is in. The Office of Student Affairs works closely with our students, as some of the more competitive residency programs do look for research as part of the undergraduate medical education experience, look for publications. So different physician groups within our health system, the orthopedic group in particular, provides a summer research opportunity for the students that summer, where they can come get in on a defined project, stay connected with that project, and continue some of that research during their 2nd year, with ultimately the end result being a publication for the students. But again, any basic science or clinical research interest that you have, there's lots of opportunities, and the students get connected through our Student Affairs office.
Great.
So at Michigan, we have a lot of research opportunities. We're a large research institution, not unlike a number of large medical schools around the country. We've already mentioned the research opportunities in the summer. Let me also mention that students also have an opportunity, if they want to take a year off and focus on their research, they can do that. We certainly have the MD, PhD program, like many other medical schools that focus on either biomedical science. We have a separate program that gives a master's in clinical research. research. This started a couple of years ago, and so certain individuals who really want to get more training in terms of epidemiology, clinical trial design, things like that, they can take a year and focus on that aspect and receive a master's degree. We have a number of dual degree programs, not only with public health, but also with our schools of business and our schools of law, and also, I believe, with social work. So there's plenty of opportunities for students. And not everybody, who engages in research comes in as a MD, PhD type of student. A lot of them come in and experience research, and then they may elect later to apply and transfer into the MSTP program or seek other research opportunities. So there's really lots of things that students can do to get involved, and our faculty are always welcoming of students to get involved and show them what they're doing in terms of research. Lots of opportunities to participate in research teams, get publications and things like that.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Gordon. Leading off of that, you mentioned earlier about your lectures at your school in particular are videotaped. So when students are so busy, what resources do you have for them to be able to access their lectures, for example, or resources to help them study in between all of these activities that they're involved in?
Yeah, so our tapes are basically all online. They're all web-based types of things. So students can, and again, I'm sure the same thing goes on in other medical schools as well. So students can download these things to their laptops at any time, day, night, whatever. And similarly, with most of our lectures, we have, excellent handouts that are given. And so there's plenty of materials. We provide a syllabus for each course that we give. And so again, most of that, if not all of that material is online, as well as practice exam questions and things like this. So students really can have a large flexibility. And there are a few students, I don't know that I recommend it, but there are some students who rarely, if ever, attend lecture because they can get all of these materials there. It does sometimes have a few of our faculty who are sort of older generation wondering about, where are these students? Why aren't they here learning? But in fact, a lot of our students are learning just in their own way of doing that. And the faculty are very open in terms of being able to address questions over email or individually with office hours and things like that. So there's plenty of ways for students to be encouraged to learn in the ways that they see fit.
We spent an entire day last week discussing technology in the classroom and how to bring technology that you are used to learning from into medical school. We too offer podcasting, but it's after the fact, after the lecture, and similar to any other colleague on the panel, our students use mixed media to complement their learning styles. But one thing that we're finding of our students is that medical school is you are requiring of medical schools to be flexible with your lifestyle. So how can we meet your needs and also provide the data, the content to you for that, so that you're successful? And really, when you come into medical school, at least our position is we're there to give you the information, to train you, and it's up to you to take that information and learn from it. And if you are an independent learner, so long as we're providing the information, how it comes to you is really up for grabs. They're long ago or trying to get away from this idea that you have to sit in the classroom to learn. Might we be more flexible and provide to you other opportunities to learn? So technology and how it's infused in medical school education, I think, is a very popular topic at the moment. There are some things you can't replace with technology. They still require face-to-face communication. We are trying to get you into a comfort zone of communicating and being humanistic. And as much as we like to think that we can do that from our smartphones or our computers, there's still that element of human touch and communication that's important in medical education. But certainly just be aware that we're trying to catch up to your generation of learners and make sure that we're not going back to pen and paper for entire lectures when you are used to learning in a very different way. So you have to help us understand how we can use technology to better the experience for you.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure it's really comforting to all the students here that there are those resources out there. But what about future doctors with disabilities? How do you accommodate for that? And do you help them meet the technical standards? Dr. Peck, did you have something?
Yes.
Thank you.
We do have accommodations available for students with disabilities. I can speak to recent years having students that are wheelchair-bound or have hearing impairment or vision impairments. And again, we use the technology available to make our curriculum more accessible to these people with disabilities. We do have variously equipped examination rooms. For example, exam rooms where the exam tables are lower such that a physician who is in a wheelchair would be able to access the patient more easily. And I do feel that we address these individual students' needs on an individual basis. And that way we are much more flexible as far as accepting students with a wide range of disabilities rather than having a set availability of different interventions and that the students have to meet whatever interventions we have available. I think we have the opportunity to get very creative with assisting students with disabilities.
Thank you very much. And we've covered basically so much about the curriculum and the process. Do students have time in between to work? And if not, how do they finance their education at your various schools? And we can start with Dr. Gordon. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
I can weigh in. So this comes up occasionally. I don't advise students to try to work, particularly even part-time during medical school. What most people find is that the intensity of the curriculum is so heavy, that it really doesn't lend itself for you to try to work 20 hours a week as you may have done, for example, as an undergraduate. If you really have that kind of financial need, I think most people would say, have a lot of discussions with the financial aid officers. We can certainly work out things with loans and things like that. The few people that I've seen that may successfully work a little bit in medical school, and this typically is in the first 2 years, will be someone, say maybe who has worked as a blood drawing technician or something like that previously in the hospital, and is doing this for a couple of hours here and there. They can get by. I've seen an occasional medical student in our case that has been a Kaplan tutor, for example, as an undergraduate, and has been able to continue some of that in the first and second year, but not after the second year when they get into the clinical arena. So I think it's fair to say for our students, we do not encourage students to try to hold down even a half-time job because the work is so intense, and people really run the risk of tripping up and not being able to really assimilate all the information that medical school has to offer. And the last thing we want is someone to be tripping up, start failing out, and then in a worst case scenario, perhaps have to be dismissed and have racked up all of these medical school loans and not end up with a degree and the salary to be able to pay those things off. So in a nutshell, and with few exceptions, we do not recommend that students try to work while they're going through medical school.
I 100% agree. But one thing I want to say, I have to assume you're not in medical school yet, right? So now is the time, right now, to start thinking about how you will finance your med school, whether through loans or aid or whatever. And I would encourage you all to start looking into the financial aid part. Maybe make an appointment with the financial aid officer in the med school to see what the future will be for you. Because one thing that we have found where our hands are tied, if you've already approved a lot of credit card debt, etc., and taken out tons of loan, your options may be limited. So start thinking about that right now, okay?
If I can add one other thing. One other thing. We tend to focus all on financial aid, scholarships, and things like that, but there's another area that students need to keep in mind, and that is loan repayment programs. So for a lot of people who get a significant amount of indebtedness, depending on what they want to do afterwards, there are several programs around the country and federally funded. For example, if you want to work in an underserved area or be part of the public health system, there can be, you can get a significant amount of your loans paid for. If you want to do research, for example, in clinical research and certain types of programs, you can apply for loan repayment. I'm even told that even if for some people going into private practice, as an incentive to get them to practice in certain areas, rural areas and things like that, certain private practices are also offering loan repayment, things like that. So there are several ways of addressing your financial needs in medical school, not in addition to the formal scholarships and initial loans that you take out during medical school.
I would add to that, the AAMC has done a very nice job putting together information for prospective medical students as well as current medical students on financing your medical education. So I would recommend that each of you visit that site. It's aamc.org/first. Lots of different information about financing, about repayment issues. They have calculators on there that help you understand what your repayment amount will look like based on the amount of debt that you have. The other thing that I recommend when I meet with applicants is that they pull a credit report on yourself. A lot of the alternative loans look at your credit worthiness, so make sure it's just you on the credit report. Some of them do require a cosigner, so start thinking about if you do need to get an alternative loan with a cosigner, who that person would be. You want to make sure that if there is anything on your credit report that is not you, that you do have time to fix that, because you don't want to be finding out in July that there's something that's not you on your credit report, because it will hold up your loans. And then the other big recommendation is to come to medical school with 0 credit card debt, because the worst thing you can do is pay off some of that credit card debt with financial aid dollars. So.
Thank you for those really good tips. And I guess the take-home message from that question is there are resources out there for that. And this will be our last question. And to end on a bit of a happier note, if you were to ask one of your students, because we know medical school is expensive, but there's a way to do that. But if you were to ask one of your students, what is your favorite thing about medical school, just in one sentence, what would they say? And we can start on that end right over there and work our way down.
Their fellow classmates. Seriously. They've learned so much from each other, and they have bonded very carefully and closely, so they're lifelong friends. So, because I talk to them all the time, they love their fellow classmates.
I would say a lot of our students would say having an impact on people's lives. Many times it's an individual patient that they've dealt with, or a family, and to be able to, even if it's only them explaining what their medical condition is in ways that the family members can understand. That's a big ongoing gratification that a lot of our medical students get. And frankly, it's the ongoing gratification that all of us in the health professions get. It's what keeps us motivated, and it's what keeps us in our jobs. And very damn few people, even though you hear people talk about, gee, medicine has gotten more complex, bureaucratic, I wouldn't advise my son or my daughter to go into medicine right now. You'll see a lot of people say things like that, but look at where they go with their feet. Very few of those individuals actually leave the profession, and this is why, because it's one of the few professions that allows you to really be able to help people in very tangible ways.
To repeat one of the previous answers, I would say they're classmates. I think you're entering a community when you join a medical school, and you want to be around people that you enjoy working with, studying with, and playing with. And I often hear from students that the reason that they choose to come to Temple is the people that they met on interview day. They can see themselves doing those things with the people that they meet on interview day. They enjoy the service that our students are involved with. So I think really the students, the service, the whole environment that is provided.
At Rochester, I have to say that it is their classmates. They establish strong relationships with each other. Our class size is 104. You get to know everyone quite well over 4 years, and you bond because you're going through the same kind of challenges and victories and so forth together, and it really forms some very tight bonds, and those continue through their careers. And so I'd say it is the peers.
Similar to Dr. Gordon, I hope that our students are walking away with an appreciation of the gift that they've been given through their support, their training to have an impact on individual lives. These students are privileged to hear information that family members don't hear. They're privileged to touch and to heal. And I hope that over the time of 4 years that they've grown to appreciate humanism in medicine, and it has more to do with your interaction with your human, with the human, than it does necessarily recalling the information that you learned from a textbook. So that gift of giving back to humankind. And I know it sounds very philosophical and touchy-feely, but we have to remind our students that they are becoming healers. So I hope that over 4 years, that's what they leave the message.
I have the opportunity to ask our alumni during our revisit weekend in the spring that very question. And almost from year to year, it very seldom sways from exactly what has been said already. They really, really have a feeling for their classmates, and you can tell the way they greet each other when they come back to meet. But another thing I think that Cornell students really get a sense of is how much there is that is being offered. We didn't mention anything about international travel, which has influenced many students' lives, particularly in the last 10 years, because there's been a lot of global, international work going on. They're really surprised about that, how much in abundance. And also, I think the help that they get from the staff and administration. We make a promise to the students, if you have something that you really want to do, just ask us. No matter how crazy it sounds, we'll try to find a way, which is why, and I'm surprised, I'm a Cornell graduate, but we have 3 astronauts who've gone up into space, and they come back and talk to the students. So it's really, they really get a chance to realize that there's a lot of things they can do, and there's a lot of resources like all of these schools have.
I would agree with the other panel participants here. Our students value very highly their relationships with their classmates and the students in the classes above and below them. Again, as they come back for alumni reunions and things along those lines, that continues to be at the forefront. And the relationships they develop with people that will be their colleagues in their medical practices throughout the rest of their lives. They too also value the breadth of education that they receive. Yes, they are well equipped to become physicians, but during their 4 years at the medical school, they are exposed to many other opportunities and different avenues to use the talents and skills that they emerge with. And that's something that they come back and report as being very valuable to them as well.
Thank you very much. So before we give a hand to our participants on our panel, I would like to just let you all know that if you'd like more information on the financial aid aspect of applying to medical school, we do have a workshop on that this afternoon, and the information for that is in your programs. And let's give them a hand. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for all that great information.